Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome. I'm going to call the regular meeting of the Nevada City Council to order. Today is Wednesday, March 8th, 2023, International Women's Day, and it is 6:30 p.m. Let's get started. Gabby's going to start us off with the Nisenan tribal recognition, please.
We acknowledge that the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though nearly invisible. We understand that we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and the original tribal families have yet to recover from the near genocide of their people. As a resident or visitor in the Nisenan land, we support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people as well as their campaign to restore federal recognition.
Thanks, Gabby. Dean, would you lead us all in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Wow. Ready to begin. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Mayor Fleming will not be in attendance this evening. Madam Deputy City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ceci?
Here.
Councilmember Klein?
Here.
Councilmember Peterson?
Here.
Vice Mayor Fernandez?
Here. Great. Council, now is the time for any agenda modifications. Would anybody like to make any changes to the agenda, pull consent items, or do we have any recusals to announce? Any? We're all good? Okay. I'm looking for a motion and a second to adopt the agenda with no modifications.
I move we adopt the agenda with no modifications.
Second.
Great. I have a motion by Councilmember Peterson and a second by Councilmember Ceci. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. Motion carries 4-0. We're going to get started tonight with some presentations, with a presentation. A city partner introduction of the Sierra Fund, presented by Dawn Zaidonis, Parks and Recreations Manager. Hello, Dawn. Welcome back.
Pardon me, Mayor.
Another one of our partners is here to introduce themselves to all of you. And so Carrie Monahan is here from the Sierra Fund to tell you about the things they do and some things that we've partnered on with them. So Carrie, you can either stand at the podium or sit at the table.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight. It's a pleasure to meet you all, and thank you, Dawn, for inviting me. My name's Carrie Monahan. I'm the program director at the Sierra Fund. I've been there since 2010, and I thought tonight might be a good time to come and introduce ourselves to you, since many of you are new faces. The mission of the Sierra Fund is to restore ecosystem and community resiliency. We are Sierra-wide, but we do a lot of pilot projects in and around this area. So some of the projects we're working on now, one of which is with the CHIRP nonprofit representing the Nisenan tribe, the 32 acres just downstream of the Suspension Bridge property that the city owns. So that entire tribute trail network was sponsored by the Sierra Fund, and that began, I'm going to say 2005, soon after we moved here. So we're completing a segment of that trail. Right now, walkers are having to come up onto the road. This will put them onto a trail that traverses the hillside. And we're working with CHIRP to do that project. So that actually was heard today at the Nevada County Planning Commission. So that's one thing we've done. Some of the others are work with Brownsfield, community-wide Brownfield assessment with City of Nevada City that actually was the first in the nation to receive, the City of Nevada City was the first in the nation to receive Brownfields funding from Cal EPA to address abandoned mines on city-owned properties. And that project has now become a model that we're repeating across the Sierra, working with other cities and counties to entice them to clean up their brownfields property to beneficial reuse like recreation or low-income housing or other needs that cities and counties in the Gold Rush country might have. So really, the Sierra Fund began, I guess the way we select projects to work on and how we do that is by understanding the big question of what happened here. And that led us to really deep exploration of the California Gold Rush and the impacts that that had to the environment and to the peoples that live here and how it continues to impact us today. We realized that the conservation community wasn't directly addressing those impacts and that maybe we could add value in that space. So we've done a lot of projects in that way. We also work with Forest Service and others on forest health projects, and again, by broadening the definition of forest health to include meadow restoration and mine remediation. So it's a more holistic approach and not just fuels reduction. We've partnered with the city on some forest and fuels reduction activities that the city has led. We were on the, I think it was the Fire Safety Committee for a while and helped the city write a few grants to get funding that weren't funded, but we helped write those grants. So ways of bringing in state and sometimes federal monies to the city to be able to take on high priority projects that you have for either certain parcels or certain programs. And we're your neighbors. So we're here, we're accessible, we know your staff, we work well with them. I brought you some papers today and I put them over there. It has my business card, it has our 20-year anniversary information and our 2022 accomplishments piece that we have, so you can check out some of the varied work that we do. So if you have any questions, I'm here. If I forgot anything that was obvious, let me know. But it's really nice to meet you all.
Oh, it's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for your work with CHIRP and the city and the broader community council. Do you guys have any questions, comments?
How did it go at the planning commission?
It went so well.
Awesome.
It was, the staff did a really nice staff report, so it was really set up to succeed. And there were some public comments that were submitted by writing, but we had dealt with all of those before that meeting. So I think it's going to be a really great project. I can talk a little bit more about that property if you'd like to hear a little more.
Sure.
So that's a 32-acre parcel within the Deer Creek watershed, as you're familiar, and we're very aware that that's a fire hazard for the city. And we really hope that this money that we've gotten will allow the tribe to be that model parcel for the neighborhood, because it's going to get fuels reduction this season and look really different and hopefully a lot healthier, look more like the parcel that the city has been treating just upstream of that. So that's first off. The first thing will happen as soon as we get all the permits in order will be that fuels reduction work. Then the trail will also be constructed this summer.
That's great.
Yeah, so we'll get hikers and walkers and people with strollers and all of the, the wonderful use that that area receives off of that kind of single lane dirt road, which will be a better experience for everybody, whether you're having to use the road for a reason or walking outside. That trail will have switchbacks. So when you come off of the suspension bridge and you're on the NID road walking downstream, you go through a big green metal gate. Right around that area, the trail will dip down off the hillside in a series of switchbacks. And then it will traverse along the hillside before it drops down to Woods Ravine, where there's actually an old road. So we don't have to do any work around Woods Ravine or in the riparian area. And we're going to traverse that hillside, on most of which is on a mining tram way. So it's already level and flat, and we'll really just be clearing it and making it more accessible for trail users. Cross over Woods Ravine, where that old road is down there, that would be through that white gate, and then back up in a series of switchbacks to where the trail is again. So that's kind of the route that it takes. That property is compromised with some mining artifacts. It's one of the reasons we took it on and partnered with CHIRP on it. So we did a targeted brownfields assessment for that site, and then have routed this trail so that people that use the trail will not be near those mining features, physical hazards or chemical hazards on the property. And also so that the tribe can have access to their property in ways that is still private, so that they can do all of the activities they envision for cultural revitalization on that land without having to be watched by the public. So it's both a public use and also land back to the tribe. So it's been a really fun project to be a part of.
That's great.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm forgetting
Fantastic.
things, but
Yay.
thanks. It's good to
I
meet
look
you.
forward to the summer for all that to happen.
Yeah, a lot of activity will be down there. That's finally there.
Thank you. You know, I think a lot about what it takes for a small organization like Nevada City to be able to do the things it needs to do, and it takes really strong partnerships. And you've been a great partner and are a great partner, so it's really important that we continue to work together. So thank you for your vision, and thank you for being a great partner.
My pleasure. Good to meet you all. Keep us in mind.
Thank you so much.
Yep, and reach out.
Uh-huh.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, before we move on to public comment, just a quick note about International Women's Day. I'd like to say, you know, it's a day about gender equity across the world, imagining a world free of bias and stereotypes and discrimination, a world that is equitable and inclusive, a world where we are all valued and celebrated. And I believe that we can only achieve this together by acknowledging achievements across the gender spectrum, raising awareness about discrimination, and taking action towards greater equity. I stand in solidarity with Indigenous women, Palestinian women, disabled women, Iranian women, Black women, Jewish women, Arab women, Asian women, Latinas, trans women today and every day, all year long. And as mayor, in just a few short months, I will work together with Sean, our city manager, to be better at acknowledging these important days and months for the year to come. I understand that resolutions and proclamations are largely just words, and I've said this before, but it's worth saying it again. I believe that words are a place where we start. It's where we find and make meaning. It's where we begin to shift culture and where we show people who we are. So they are a beginning, essentially, words are. And in many instances, never spoken words by this body ever before in history. And it's our job as electeds, I'm looking at my male colleagues, to hold to these words, that they take new form into action, that they don't get swallowed up by the vaults of proclamations and resolutions never to be considered again, that they become who we are and how we show up to this work. So that's a call to action to all of us in the year and years to come. With that, I'm going to move on to public comment. Government Code Section 54945432.1.3. It's not quite right. Let me get that right. 5494.
Close.
Dang. Yeah, that one provides that any member of the public may address the city council on any matter not on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. The Brown Act, with limited exceptions, does not allow the council or staff to discuss issues brought forth under public comment. The council cannot take action on non-agenda items. Concerns may be referred to staff or placed on a future agenda. Please note that comments from the public will also be taken on each agenda item at the time it is heard. At this point, do we have any public comment for items not on the agenda?
Good evening, councilors. I'm Alexa Hauser. I live in Nevada City. I wanted to thank the Fire Safety Advisory Committee for sponsoring the Green Waste pickup. It was incredibly helpful to us in Nevada City Co-housing. We were able to take 10 loads of the back of a pickup, 5 loads, and a trailer full of green waste that we didn't really have any other way of getting rid of without paying money to Waste Management. So thank you so much for making that service available.
Thank you so much, Alexa.
I would just like to acknowledge that Adam Klein on the committee is the one who put that together, and to be congratulated for that. Very successful.
I'd like to acknowledge that Aaron Manette started that program. Thank you.
Any more acknowledgements from the table?
I'd like to acknowledge you and say you're doing a great job.
Thank you. Any more public comment of items not on the agenda? All right, and Gabby, do we have anybody online?
If you would like to speak of items not on the agenda, go ahead and raise your virtual hand.
All right. We are moving on to the consent agenda. All items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. I am looking for a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar.
I move we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second that motion.
Great. I have a motion by Councilmember Klein and a second by Councilmember Peterson. Any objections to the motion? All right, I am hearing none. That means the motion carries 4-0. Okay, we are moving on to public hearings. Item number 7 on the agenda, conduct a public hearing in consideration of ordinance number 2023-03, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Nevada City, State of California, amending Chapter 8.10 Vegetation Management, Debris Removal and Abatement of Title 8, Health and Safety of the City of Nevada City Municipal Code relating to vegetation management, defensible space, burning, and fireworks regulations. Sean Grayson, take it away, sir.
Good morning. So as you know, the city has long had a vegetation management ordinance as part of the municipal code that's regulated vegetation management and more recently consolidated our municipal code actions with regard to both burning and fireworks all in one item. This item comprehensively replaces our existing ordinance and adds an additional section beyond vegetation management, burning and fireworks, adds defensible space as a portion of this, and the name will reflect that as well. You adopted an amended version of our ordinance in 2022. Your Fire Safety Advisory Committee had a number of comments on the ordinance at that time, some included and some not resolved or not included in 2022. So as we undertook this process, after several rounds of working with the Fire Safety Advisory Committee to try to squeeze the various interests into what our ordinance was, we basically gave up and started over. And the reason for that is that what we have now essentially is a mirror. It's near identical to what Grass Valley has. And there's good reason for that. We partner with them for emergency response. They are the ones that are staffing our fire station. But as you look to the things that the committee was interested in including, they largely are the requirements that exist in unincorporated areas that are the state responsibility areas or SRA, so the things that would apply completely surrounding Nevada City. And so they're just a little bit incongruent with what city ordinances generally look like. So when we started over, we basically took what the state's requirements are through CAL FIRE under the Public Resource Code, as well as what the county, Nevada County's additional requirements are within the unincorporated boundaries, and added those two things together. So those exist in a county ordinance and in state law, but they don't apply within the geographic boundaries of the city. So we wrote all of that in, put it in kind of sequential order, and so that's why it looks a lot different, but it's a means to an end. What we really get out of it is that essentially the enforceable elements of our ordinance will match the complete surrounding area of Nevada City. So if you live across the street in a 5-digit address and you think you live in Nevada City, you'll have exactly the same standards as you would in the unincorporated areas, with a couple little distinctions that we'll talk about. But that also comes with it the profound benefit of being able to use the resources already available from the county and the state as far as those enforceable elements, best practices, everything from videos and things on websites to the actual inspection forms themselves. We can use what's already there instead of reinventing the wheel with the minimal staff that we have, which is largely just Chief Goodspeed, who's in the audience this evening. So the committee met on March 3rd after having to adjust for some snow days, and reviewed this ordinance just before we posted the agenda. We did make some changes that night, and with the changes in place as what's reflected in the packet this evening, their action was to support the ordinance as written with the changes that are in there. So the things that are a little bit different are our fireworks prohibition stayed essentially the same as what it is in our ordinance. It comes towards the end. So we don't allow safe and sane or what are illegal fireworks in the state, with the exception of we would permit a fireworks show, but the fireworks show has moved to Grass Valley off of Dorsey Drive, and so we anticipate that'll probably be there for a while. Nonetheless, if someone wanted to permit a fireworks show, this would not prohibit that as long as they were legal pyrotechnicians and all that. But otherwise, we prohibit fireworks. And then the second part is our burning prohibition. So in previous instances of the ordinance, we essentially prohibit all outdoor burning with the exception of burning for ceremonial purposes, which usually are small things like the Boy Scouts doing flag burning, things like that. Also for artistic / ceremonial purposes, which would be like your fire spinners that are doing activities in the downtown during summer nights, things like that. As well as we don't prohibit warming or cooking fires that use gas. And the one caveat to that is you can use your charcoal briquettes in the barbecues at Pioneer Park because there's no gas to there, and so that is listed in there as a safe place. What the council had previously looked at was essentially eliminating all burning in the city, and what was in our previous ordinance was language that did allow for the fire division chief to issue burn permits under some select conditions. Based on the direction of the council in the past, staff had looked to remove that condition so that there would not be that allowance. The committee was purposeful in discussing those conditions and a desired future state where burning might be available. Even if we allow it today, doesn't mean we'd actually permit it. So their recommendation was to not pull that caveat out. What is in there is the same language for open burning that could be permitted as what we had in our previous ordinance, with an additional statement that says that the conditions of a burn permit would be established at the time that the permit was issued. So that's the biggest part that is not the county or the state standard. It's specific to Nevada City. So certainly a policy decision for the council to make, and we included the change back to what it was because that was the recommendation of the committee. And I appreciate their work in deliberating it. It's been, for some of them, it's been a couple of year endeavor to get to this point. And while I would say that the ordinance is not perfect, I believe, and I hope that they would support that, it is the first step, to use your analogy, Madam Vice Mayor, in the right direction, and it is something that we can change over time. But the biggest part will be now we have a standard that's similar to our surrounding agencies. The next step is to inspect to that standard, find out what the community's needs are and how we can achieve compliance to reduce the overall fuel load that's out there. So with that, I'd recommend that you conduct the public hearing, take any community input, and then we would suggest that you conduct the first reading of the ordinance.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We're going to move to the folks in the House. I'm going to ask if there's any public comment. I have a feeling there might be.
I'm Sam Gitchell, 265 Giles Street. I had the privilege of leading the subcommittee that wrote the recommendations. And it was really a fine group made up of Terry Anderson, Nancy Weber, Randall Frizzell, and myself, facilitated by Pete Williams, and the staff Representative was Chief Goodspeed. We submitted our report last April and turned it over to City Manager Sean Grayson. I want to thank Sean and Division Chief Goodspeed for all the work they've put in on this. They've really took our recommendations and brought you the draft you have now. And finally, I want to thank each of the council members who took the time to meet with us and really discuss the issues in a meaningful way. So I feel like we've all had some good conversation about this. Our report had two overarching recommendations: that the ordinance incorporate the defensible space zone system and that it be understandable to an average person. And I think this draft does both. Adopting the ordinance will have several advantages. First, it's grounded in fire science, and I think it's our best protection when the inevitable wildfire strikes. And by aligning with CAL FIRE, Nevada County, and FireWise communities, it will be a lot easier for the public to understand and for our educational messages to be consistent. I think the ordinance is a great first step toward building a prevention program. Maybe I should say second step, because I think the inspection program that started last year is a really good first step. I think this can build on that. The inspection program can be a great springboard for community education. The Fire Safety Advisory Committee also recommended that the council consider adding a staff position to provide leadership in this area. We know that's a big ask, but we also know, we think that's what it will be required to really get a program off the ground. But tonight, let's focus on the matter of hand. I think this ordinance is a great first step. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sam.
My name's Jean Dickinson, and I live and own a unit over at Nevada City Co-Housing, where I'm a board member. I would like to read into the record and to you a letter from our homeowners association. And I know that time is at a limit tonight, so that I will leave reading halfway through, and another one of our board members will continue the letter.
And Jean, just, are you aware that the time is here?
Yeah.
Just so, great.
We appreciate the city's commitment to adopting an updated ordinance for vegetation management, debris removal, and abatement that keeps our city safe and well cared for. Specifically, we appreciate the city's commitment to crafting a revised vegetation management ordinance that builds upon current knowledge and practice in both fire safety and management of different types of vegetation in wildlands, forests, and landscaped areas within the city limits. That is in line with other ordinances in California and practices used by regional agencies, making enforcement and communication easier and less expensive. That views city property owners and partners with the city in managing vegetation and keeping the city as safe as possible from wildfire. And that is responsive to input from Nevada City Fire Safety Advisory Committee members and the public. Members of our board of directors attended the last meeting of the Nevada City Fire Safety Advisory Committee and were impressed by its deliberative process and the ways in which committee members offered comments and were listened to by other committee members and city staff. In addition, the city manager welcomed committee input and revised the draft ordinance accordingly. To be continued.
Jean does the appreciation, I do the ask. So we urge the council to allow, I'm Alexa Hauser. I live in Nevada City Co-Housing. I'm a board member there. We urge the council to allow greater flexibility than the current draft would allow by making the following change to 8-10-100, exception, special permit, ceremonial operations, as follows. 8-10-100, exception, special permit, strike the word ceremonial, operations. Strike the clause, if an operational water supply is not present, and start with, if any of the fire protection requirements cannot be met due to the location of the operations site, the public official may determine, strike the word and, appropriate alternative methods, add the S, of fire protection for special permit, strike the word ceremonial, operations only. The draft ordinance includes 5 special permits available for authorized burning and 5 fire protection requirements for these exceptions. We do not understand the logic or safety benefit of selecting just one permit type, ceremonial fire, and one fire protection requirement, operational water supply, for the public official to determine an alternative. To be in line with the best fuel treatment practices, many of the most important locations for risk reduction in our town are necessarily outside of these limitations, especially some of the large city-owned parcels which are positioned along modeled high-risk corridors. Our suggested revision permits property owners and the public official greater flexibility for permit fire for the health and safety of the public without giving up control over permit requirements. Thank you for considering our suggestion and for your leadership and work for the benefit of our community. Thanks.
Thank you, Alexa and Jean.
I'm Teresa Thomas, 214 Gethsemane Street. I want to encourage the City Council to approve the new vegetation management ordinance and to thank all the people who worked so hard to write it. I understand that the new ordinance aligns itself with the guidelines of CAL FIRE in Nevada County, which will decrease regulation confusion for us boomers who are already confused enough. My only concern is that there are only 2 sentences that address the natural world around us. One says that our city has many sensitive plants and animal species, and in another paragraph that these sensitive plants and animal species need to be protected without any specifics about the how-to. So as a member of the Audubon Society, I want to remind you of the Migratory Bird Act of 1918, which prohibits the taking of migratory birds, their nests, and our eggs. And migratory birds are all birds except for pigeons, house sparrows, and starlings. So our nesting season here in Nevada County is March through August, which is, of course, when everybody wants to cut down trees. So I'm hoping that you will make that part of your education for the mitigation of all this stuff we have. In North America, we have lost more than 3 billion birds since 1970. And so care must be taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Anybody else like to offer public comment on this?
Scott Listar, 405 Old Downeyville. First and foremost, thank everybody. A, for plowing the roads, fantastic, good to see. Thank God PG&E finally showed up. I'm just up here to really hope that you take in consideration the staffing needs. In my former professional career, I did a lot of policies and procedures, and the biggest part that always failed was the application and enforcement. So, as you know, there's a lot to be done here, and a lot of work has been done, but I'd hate to see the momentum fail without having some support from the staffing end. So, something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody else? Gabby, what about online?
We do. Is there anybody else? Well, all three have raised their hands, so. Go ahead, Linda, address council.
Hello, my name is Linda Sutter, and I live on Drummond Street in downtown Nevada City. And I wish to encourage all of you on the city council, as well as the city manager, to please enact this third draft of the proposed ordinance. Nevada County is one of the most fire-prone counties in the state. The Subcommittee for the Fire Safety Advisory Committee, who represents a wealth of knowledge and personal hours, has created a lifeline that could keep our town from going up in flames. Fortunately, we still have time to be able to have this conversation. It's not too late. We require a marriage between city officials and citizens of this town in the form of a city employee who can act as an educational liaison utilizing CAL FIRE and Nevada County vegetation standards. We must create an interpersonal link between the city and the public. Ignoring the dangers of forest fire will have a profound consequence beyond all of our wildest imaginations. We need the city manager and the city council to respond rapidly and professionally. Band-Aids will not work. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Linda.
Next, we have Theo Fernandez. Go ahead.
He'll tell you how to pronounce it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, this is Theo Titanides, like humanities.
Okay.
And yeah, I just want to extend appreciation to the people who served on the subcommittee to put these recommendations in place for the last 2.5 years and more. And for the city manager being receptive to these changes. I think it's going to bode really well for the public education campaign, which is where all the good, juicy stuff is going to happen. And I'm definitely in line with my neighbors at Co-Housing that I personally would like to burn on this property to get the leaf litter down, but I would be happy if we were exempted and the city were still allowed to burn on their property. I think that's really a primary need for us as a community to kind of follow the best practices that are coming to light now especially from Blodgett Forest, the research station at Blodgett Forest that UCCE runs. Just really, really strong evidence that understory burning is really helpful for both the natural world in a lot of different environments, but also for reduction of fire spread and intensity. So I really hope that the City Council will enhance the language as read by Alexa Hauser. I think that it's a really easy thing to do that doesn't make any more smoke by enacting it, but I think it really leaves flexibility for when everybody gets online with this current research and all the current acting fire professionals on wildfires, the people who are in charge of IMTs, these people are seeing the impacts of controlled burning in the last 5 to 10 years. It doesn't have to be the same year the fire goes through. The leaf litter is just ridiculously built up, and the little sticks, and that's what carries most of the fire in these situations. So you've heard it from me before, but I think it's just read the research, please. After you, I hope you enhance the language a little bit, because it's not really something we can close off as an option and expect to serve the citizen dutifully. Of course, there's so much to work about smoke management in the future, but I think we can do that as well if any permits were to be issued in the future. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Theo.
Okay, next we have Terry Voorhees. Voorhees? Go ahead, Taylor Voorhees.
Hi, this is Terry Voorhees, and I'm at 334 Jordan Street. And I am so sorry I could not be there tonight. I am one of the original, came from Deer Creek Southside Firewise community along with Sam Gitchell. And at the beginning came for recommendations on the vegetation management ordinance that eventually came to the creation of the Nevada City Fire Safety Advisory Committee, which I still serve on. And I just would like to thank the subcommittee for the extensive work they did. All of the time that they spent on these recommendations, along with really considering the education and the resources that already exist through CAL FIRE and OES and Fire Safe Council. I think they did a tremendous job, and I thank the city manager and Chief Goodspeed for considering that and making sure that became a part of this new ordinance. I think we'll really benefit from being able to work in partnership with these other agencies and use what they've already created for education. So I look forward to and encourage and hope that everyone moves forward with this ordinance. And I look forward to helping with the ongoing inspection program. It started last year, and we know that it will take a while to get up and running, but I think this, along with the new ordinance, is going to just make it that much easier for residents to adhere. So thank you again. I thank the city council. I thank everybody for all the work that they've put into this, and just all of the focus on fire prevention. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Good to hear from you.
That would be it.
All right, one last time. Anyone else in the room? Going once, going twice? All right, we're going to bring it to the table. I'd love to hear from council members if you have any questions for Sean, or any thoughts or comments.
Personally, I'd like to hear from our committee members first, who were, that would, these two guys that were on
Okay.
committees.
Yeah.
Sure.
What would you like to hear, Gary?
I'd like to hear your thoughts.
My thoughts. Well, okay, it's going to be a late night, folks. This was a long process, and it took us a long time to get to this stage with a lot of back and forth. But I think, as you've heard from the public, this is definitely a great step in the right direction. I'd say it's a step, but it's a big step. I want to make that clear. Huge step.
All night, huh, Adam?
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Okay.
So this, the Fire Safety Advisory Committee was actually established on February 10th, 2020. That's more than 3 years ago. And we have been working steadily and hard on this, the Fire Safety Advisory Committee. And despite a changeover in the council, and despite a changeover even in the committee membership, the goal has been the same. And it's right here in section 4 of that resolution in February of 2020, support the creation of an overall comprehensive vegetation management plan for wildlife mitigation, for wildfire mitigation. Sorry, Teresa. Wildfire. There's still work to do. Now the Fire Safety Advisory Committee needs to turn its focus on educating the public on what this ordinance means and how it'll be enforced and what they can do to change the culture in town to make wildfire less likely to happen and less likely to be severe when it does happen. There are also things that the council still needs to do. For example, once this ordinance is passed, the council needs to consider the ramifications of permitting ADUs when an ADU on my neighbor's property suddenly extends their zone of defense into my property. How do I get notified? That's something that I think that the Planning Commission needs to consider. We also need to look at open burning, as was mentioned by the representatives from co-housing, but they're not the only area where that is important. And we need to look at the wildlife ramifications, as Teresa brought up. No ordinance or law is perfect or complete, but I think we have now a common and understood starting point. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Gary. I bet you have some thoughts.
Yeah. I do. First and always, thank you to the many community members, the enormous amount of community leadership that has gone into this, staff leadership. I think about you a lot, Mr. Goodspeed, about the changes that you were asked to make and willingly complied with. There's a lot of things that changed here. I think I appreciate Lou's perspective on the history, and would also say that there was a major administrative change in that period of time that changed the way that the city began to look at that with new leadership there, and also a strategic plan that identified this as a focus, which allowed us to begin to move resources in that direction. I am inclined to approve the ordinance as written. I am not inclined to make the changes requested based on an incomplete understanding of what a permitting process might look like. I do agree this is a very good, and it's a huge leap forward. I'm well aware of the folks that did the work on this, and they did an enormous job, a very professional job. We're fortunate to have that level of expertise available to us. It is a good start. There is the educational piece. It's going to require much more enforcement, but also if we're going to look at burning as a tool, it needs to be comprehensively understood. A simple change to the language that now exists will not accomplish that. So if it were up to me, and I would ask my colleagues to consider what it might take to direct staff over the next year to do two things. One, to identify and develop a permitting process, including perhaps an appeal process that allows us to really clearly identify those situations where it is appropriate to burn and what that looks like. Not simply that we're going to do this and this, but what does it really mean? I mean, there's a history here, too, of why we don't burn in this city, and that's because of burning that was mishandled in the past. Fortunately, it was just an issue of smoke and not an issue of fire. I guess I should say that my first 10 years of my life were wildland fire. I went to a lot of controlled burns that didn't remain controlled. For everything from burn piles to test burns with full-on fire. So it is not as simple as just going to burn no matter what the theory is, no matter what the experts are. It takes a really focused effort to do that. So we need to understand those parameters. I'd like to see that process worked out. What would a real permit process look like? Expand the understanding, do the research required. It is a tool that could be used, and certainly the city could use it as well as property owners, but I think we really need to understand it. The other piece is funding. This ordinance will open up to us the opportunity to go for grants, but at the same time, I agree that we need staff. I agree that we need that focus. I also agree, written a lot of policy myself. I don't see the procedures in here that are going to get us where we need to go. And procedures, policy is what we're going to do. Procedures are how we're going to do it. So it is an incredible start that was forged out of a lot of hard work by a lot of folks. And it gets us to a place where we need to look at how to implement it and how to fund it and what that's going to be. I know our mayor at the last meeting surfaced the possibility of a sales tax or some other means of funding this. I think we as a community need to focus on this. This is absolutely a priority. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to bring that together? So I would like to, recommend I'm not going to make the motion because there's people that worked on this a lot harder than I have, but I would recommend that we think, one, about taking the next year and directing staff to develop a permit burning process so that we understand that, and to talk to the city manager, direct the city manager to consider how we can begin to fund this process, because if we don't staff it and if we don't enforce it, it's only a piece of paper. So that's where I am.
Great, Gary, thank you so much. I support both of those directions to staff personally. I agree. I also support having additional staff to support us in fire. I mean, this is our future, whether we like it or not, and we need more support, absolutely. I agree with Alexa and co-housing. We need greater flexibility in permitting. I also agree with Gary that adjusting a few words in the language as written is not enough, and it makes it more clunky. I think what Gary and my cohort of council coming in, and with Sean, the support of Sean as city manager, has been we're really, really tightening the ship. We're creating processes for the first time in a lot of ways and procedures. And I want to do it right as opposed to just adjusting some language to make allowances here and there. So I totally support having a process. Gary's my buddy in process. We're both big process people in permitting. Absolutely. I also want to go back to Teresa's comment. Thank you so much for noting that there are 2 sentences that talk about sensitive plants and animal species. I'd like to remind myself, council, city staff that, when we did our strategic plan, one of our embedded initiatives that we should consider in everything moving forward is climate resiliency. And I think this is kind of like a buzzword, and we're still trying to figure out what does that mean? What does that look like? And we're going to figure it out as we go. And I think this is one of those things, I took a moment to look up climate resiliency. It's the capacity of social, economic, and ecosystems to cope with a hazardous event or trend or disturbance. And we do this by reorganizing in ways that maintain essential functions, identity, and structure, and biodiversity, right? So ecosystems are included in that, biodiversity is included in that. I think if we can, I don't want to hold up the vote today to say, I'm not going to vote on it because it doesn't have this thing, but I want us to, because this is a living, breathing document, to begin incorporating those pieces that consider our ecosystem of plants and animals. And what else? I think that's it. Oh, also, super huge thanks to the Fire Safety Advisory Committee that's been working for years. And some of those are, Sam and Nancy, and both Terry's and Randall, and Theo, and I heard the name Pete. I'm not sure who Pete is, but Pete, hi Pete, yay, you too. And Aaron Manette for starting it, and Lou and Adam and Chief Goodspeed and our city manager, Sean Grayson. Thank you all so much for your work on this. It takes the whole team, and it sure the heck took a long, when they say government takes a long time, this is exactly what they were talking about. I'm sorry it took so long, but we're here, and I'm super excited to vote yes for this.
I think with what Gary was saying, and the process, that the tail end of the process really that Lou and I saw coming in as new council members, I think the whole process of getting it to where it is, it's probably not wise to add stuff right now on the fly when we can deliberate on that and make sure it's perfect, or as close to perfect as this stuff gets over the next year. And I agree with Gary in that. But I think that everything that everyone has been saying is worth discussing and hopefully having a version of in the future. And I support that as well.
Great, thank you, Adam. Anything else from the table?
You want to go for it, Lou?
Sure. I move that whatever I need to move to get this thing going. Could someone educate me on that? I think it's...
Dean wants to talk.
He's positioning his microphone.
So the recommended motion is hold first reading, waive reading of ordinance in its entirety, read by title only, and schedule for second reading and adoption for March 22nd, 2023.
And that title would be, for the record, ordinance number 2023-03, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Nevada City, State of California, amending Chapter 8.10, Vegetation Management, Debris Removal, and Abatement of Title 8, Health and Safety of the City of Nevada City Municipal Code, relating to vegetation management, defensible space, burning, and fireworks regulations.
That was great. That was impressive.
I second.
Move.
So moved.
So moved.
I second.
Excellent. We have a so moved by Councilmember Cece and a second by Councilmember Klein. Gabby, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Passes 4-0.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. Item number 8. Under business, consideration of the Assembly Bill 481 Annual Military Equipment Use Report and review of Ordinance 2022-05 adopting a military equipment policy for Nevada City. Chief Voss, please come join us.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, members of council. Give me a moment, because until about right now, I thought this was consent, so let me get my notes. Okay, we'll see how good I am and how much I remember of this. So what we're talking about is Assembly Bill 481. This went into effect January of 2022. And what it was doing, I hate the verbiage of it, because it doesn't exactly fit what it was trying to accomplish. So what it was doing is, prior to any usage of or purchasing of or raising funds for anything categorized as military equipment by the police department, it does have to come to the council first and be open to the public. And it will all be published onto our webpage. All the equipment that's used will be used on the webpage. I love all that. I just don't like the term military equipment, because some of it is very much military equipment. Some of it is, as we'll talk about today, and one of the only things that, or the only designated piece that the Nevada City Police Department uses, I don't think should be deemed as military equipment, but we'll talk about why it is. I'm not going to go over the entire list unless you ask for it so, which I can do it. I do have it here. But basically, it is, everybody's probably heard the term of MRAP, which is mine-resistant ambush vehicle. That's the big vehicle that most SWAT teams use nowadays. We don't have one of those, so we don't have to designate it. These are just on the list of military equipment. This one sounds really cool, a tracked armored vehicle. I thought about trying to ask for one, but I couldn't justify why we would need one here. But they do sound very cool, and I don't know anybody that has those. Weaponized aircraft, vessels, vehicles of any kind that are weaponized, we don't have any of those. Battering rams, slugs, breaching apparatuses, we do have some of those. The big caveat, though, is that are explosive in nature. We do not have any of those. It goes into some weapons that are classified. One in particular I'll touch on for a moment. Any firearm that is under 50 caliber and designated as an assault weapon, we do have those, but they're not on our list. The reason is the caveat is, with the exception of standard issue firearms. That is the long rifle that you'll hear in most patrol vehicles in California, or pretty much standard issue across the nation at this point in time. They are standard issue, so they will not be listed on the list. So if you don't see them, that is why. The only item that we do have is, they say, kinetic rounds. And what I think they were talking about is military uses some kinetic rounds that are more dispersed. They're usually used to clear minefields, that type of thing. However, we have beanbag rounds, which are designated as a kinetic round. A beanbag round is used from a 12-gauge shotgun, and you'll see a shotgun. They're very clearly identified because it is a less lethal option. So the shotguns, we just won't put this round into a regular shotgun, because then there could be room for error where you don't remember which round is in there. Is it a lethal round or a beanbag round? So every shotgun that is for less lethal has an orange strap and an orange charging handle and an orange stock. So it's very bright, very obvious immediately to the officers that this is a less lethal shotgun. A beanbag round is, just like it sounds, it's not full of beans. They're full of like little silicone plastic beads, and inside of a sock that's inside of the round. And when the officer does fire it, they're very short effective range, usually around 10 to 15 yards, and they're used for pain compliance. They have been modified heavily over the last 20 years since they've been introduced. They're very effective. They're designed specifically to not penetrate skin or to break skin. Sometimes they can if it's very close range, but by and large, they just cause an impact to the individual, which stuns them to some degree, and then the officers are able to disarm the individual and take them into custody. They're only used, or traditionally going to be used, in very high-risk situations where we don't want to use lethal force, but we need to get somebody that is a high-risk felon individual into custody, and it prevents injury for the officer and the individual, actually, because if we have to go hands-on, that's where a lot of injuries happen to both the officer and the individual. So that is the only item that we do have that's designated as military equipment for the Nevada City Police Department. And this is part of AB 481, which is a good aspect of it. is we had to approve this into policy. We had to author a policy which was approved last year. And every year now going forward, we do have to review that policy before the council, make sure that you're still approving of the policy and go over any items that we did purchase or are seeking to purchase. So with that, do we have any questions?
Gary, I think you have a question or two or three. Come forward.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
How about acquisition in the future of military equipment? Do we only find out that it was acquired when you present it to us each year, or does it come to us as a choice?
So the verbiage is, and let me refer to my notes if I could just to ensure, but the verbiage is prior to. So if we're seeking any, let me see if I get it just exactly right for you. Before equipment, before using, purchasing, raising funds, so the verbiage is very specifically before, so prior to. So anytime that we're looking or seeking anything that's going to be on this list, we would have to bring it forward to the council.
Before you get your MRAP. Right?
Before I get my MRAP.
You can put all the city hall in an MRAP. Right? So, thank you, Chief.
Are beanbags rounds ever used for crowd control?
I'm not going to say, I have seen them used in crowd control on videos across the nation when we have had incidents. I will say that that is not the intended use for our officers, and I could never put us in the situation in my head that where we would be using a beanbag round into a crowd. They're not highly accurate, so, and again, their range is not very great, so I do not consider them an effective crowd control option at all.
Just so long as that is clear to everyone who might be handling these.
Yeah, we're highly trained in the beanbag round, and they're very seldom used. I don't believe Nevada City has ever deployed it since the time that they've had them for a number of years.
Thank you.
The militarization of the police force in this country makes my eyes twitchy and my skin crawl. So when I first read this in the packet, I went, well, what's all this then? And then I continued reading, and I mellowed out because, well, this is non-lethal force, and it's some bean bags, and you guys haven't used any yet. That mellows me right out. I'm kind of the mind that it's probably the Andy Griffith in me, but I'd love to see police dressing like mailmen again, and not be super badass and be more servy protecty. But I'm an old-fashioned guy. Anyhow, having read this, I'm fine with it. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. I agree with you. I think the name is unfortunate. It's unfortunate the way we phrase things and how they get understood or misunderstood. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that the beanbags are the only militarized equipment that we have, particularly in a place where they've not been deployed. And my understanding is that, there's not a lot of violent crime here. And so just really wanting to get back to the community policing model. And I don't disagree with much of what my colleague Adam Klein has said. So yeah, thank you for your presentation. Anything else?
I am good as long as we have prior approval. That's all it's about, because then we have say and community input on that would specifically, I believe, address Councilmember Klein's concerns.
Yes, and you do have prior approval for anything on this list, which is attached to the packet. The only other thing I could ever foresee Nevada City and any time in the future ever going on this list again would be drones. Drones is included as well. And a lot of that would be more for search and rescue than it would be for anything else. So, but that's on this list as well.
And are there other things that the drone would be used for? I'm just curious. I don't know.
Drones are used, they're used for a variety of tasks nowadays. Sometimes they're used for suspect apprehension, so what's called a leg bell. If somebody flees from you and they get away, then you can lift a drone up, and it's a cheap helicopter, and try to get overhead vision of where they may be fled to. In this situation, today, for example, I walked up and down town looking for flat roofs to try to notify them, hey, get the snow off your roof. If we had a drone, it would have been used for that. You know, I could have flown it over town and looked for flat roofs or looked for heavy snow. It would be used in our community, I believe, if we did get drones. Probably the majority of it would be used for non-practical police purposes or non-standard police purposes. It would be more used for flying over the community, looking for flood situations, maybe looking for somebody that is lost, which is a police function, snow loads, that type of thing.
Which fits into community policing, would you say?
Yes.
Definition of? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Chief. Okay. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
Comment.
Oh, yes. Thank you. First, I'd like to hear from the public. Does the public have any comments? Okay. Nobody in the room? What about online, Gabby?
If you would like to speak on this topic, please raise your virtual hand, lower right-hand corner. We do not, madam.
Great. Now I'm looking for a motion to approve the continued use of the equipment without change.
I move that we do that, that we. So,
I second that we do that.
it's contagious. It's contagious.
Sorry.
I move that we, let's see, consider that we, that we,
Approve the continued use of the equipment without change?
that we approve the continued use of the equipment without change.
Great. we
Sorry to
got-
disappoint, Dean.
You could never disappoint, Gary. Okay, can I get a second?
I second that we approve the continued use of the equipment without change, as my colleague, council member.
You just
mentioned.
wanted to say it again, didn't you? All right, I've got a motion and a second. Gabby, can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Cece.
Yes.
Councilmember Klein.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fernandez.
Yes.
Passes 4-0.
Passes. Thank you again, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
All right. Agenda item number 9, consideration of the 2022 Housing Element Progress Report. Take it away, City Planner Amy Wolfson.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Good evening, Council. The annual progress report facilitates implementation of the housing element by tracking the city's housing permits as they relate to the regional housing needs allocation, or RHNA numbers, was set for Nevada City most recently by the 6th housing element cycle. The Housing and Community Development Agency allocates the number of housing units each jurisdiction must plan for in a given housing cycle and sets targets for each for various income levels. For the current 6th cycle, the city has been assigned 135 total housing units to be completed by the end of the cycle in 2027. In 2022, which is what this is reporting on, the city issued certificates of occupancy for 56 dwelling units, largely due to Cashman's Field project, and issued permits to 6 dwelling units. Most of those were accessory dwelling units. The total remaining RHNA allocations include 2 low-income units, 22 moderate-income units, and 42 above-moderate units, for a total of 66 units. I will note that in 2021, the city issued permits for 9 units and certificates of occupancy for those now this year that were in excess of the low-income target. The state has indicated that these can still be used to credit RHNA targets. So for the purposes of the calculation, I said we had 2 in the low income category, although the spreadsheet's going to read 11 because we had an excess in the very low, and there's just the way their spreadsheet works, there's not a way for me to change it. So I just make a notation of it when I send them the report. There's the housing element also provides a list of tasks that we're supposed to accomplish over the housing cycle. And those are listed in a table that are reiterated here in the report on page 86 of your packet. Among those tasks are several municipal code amendments that the city is required to make. And I do hope to accomplish most of those amendments here pretty soon. I did take them to the Planning Commission, and they wanted me to do a few tweaks to them. So working on that, and we'll bring it back to them here hopefully soon. Among the other things of those tasks that we're planning to accomplish this year would be to create an ordinance for reasonable accommodation, which is for those folks with disabilities, and conduct a surplus land review whereby the city reviews city-owned land to determine its suitability for low and very low income households. And With that, I would ask that you receive and file the report and authorize staff to transmit it to HCD before the April 1st deadline.
All right. Thoughts, comments, questions from the council?
I was just curious. Thank you for adding the deadline at the end. There's so much made of cities that did not meet filing reports around housing. And I wasn't sure whether this was that report. No. Okay.
Nope, it's April 1st every year.
April 1st
Yep.
every year.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are we on track to meet the 2027?
So I would say we're in good shape for our low-income housing. It's really our above moderate that we're gonna and our moderate that we're gonna struggle with meeting, probably. And I would say that's probably true across California jurisdictions. We may be one of the only ones that will be close to meeting our low income.
I might, if I could go again, this might be a good time to reference the Western Cities Magazine article that was really was great. It was great to see that, that you read it, that we had more than met our years.
It did say that. We do still actually have 2 in our low income, but we'll probably meet that in the next 4 years.
Right, but it was a great article pointing to the work that was done and how we had addressed the need, and remarkable that a city this size had done so. Kind of shows who we are. Good work.
The strategic planning showed that pretty much the whole community is on board with working on the housing issue, and the idea of putting housing on some of city-owned property is very encouraging to me. I just appreciate that the staff is with the people on that. Thank you.
Yeah. I have nothing new to add, but yeah, thank you for your work on this.
A tangential item would be the update on the status of the Grove and Gracie Commons. We'll be back in front of the council at the next meeting. Amy actually did all the work to get there, but because of the snowstorms, we weren't able to button up some of those items. So you can blame that on me, but you will have that update at the next council meeting as to the status of those 2 entitled yet not underway in any fashion housing developments that both have. Well, one has a deed restricted moderate or lower income, and the other has an affordable by design, which is not affordable by design. Nonetheless, those are your 2 entitled projects that you requested at the last time that you extended one of the tentative maps, that they come back to you. So that will be in front of you next meeting, and it would be great to get those underway because those are our 2 big, ways to address those numbers in the near future.
Thank you for adding that in. There's no new news for either of those.
Wait and see till the agenda's posted. One, there is absolutely no news that I'm aware of, and the other intends to move forward by summertime, I believe. So we'll have that buttoned up for you on the 22nd.
Great.
Look forward to it.
All right, do we need a motion on this? Do we need a motion on it, though?
He will, yes.
I'd like to go to the public. Any public comment on this? All righty, and online?
If you'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand, lower right-hand corner. No, we do not.
All right, so I do need a motion on this. Can I get a motion to receive and file an authorized transmittal of the report to the Department of Housing and Community Development?
I move that we receive and file an authorized transmittal of the report to Department of Housing and Community Development.
I second it.
Excellent. We've got a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call, Gabby, please?
Councilmember Cece?
Yes.
Councilmember Klein?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fernandez?
Yes.
Passes 4-0.
Great. Thank you
you.
so much.
Thank you, Amy.
So next we're going to move on to city manager, council member reports, and future agenda items. City manager, would you please give us your report?
So I'll be brief and keep it to the weather at hand. The snow stopped today, which is awesome. The rain will come tomorrow, which is not so awesome. The last time I remember it being like this, I think was 1990, 1991, something like that. We had a whole bunch of snow in about a week and a half, and then much warmer weather and rain. And I remember being able to, if you were so inclined, kayak through Sacramento Street and Boulder, among other areas of flooding. So we have, as Chief Foss noted, what he would have been doing if he had a drone today. We have been working with the chamber and directly with the property owners, letting them know about the concerns about snow load on roofs and the accumulation of rain. We've been actively removing snow from our buildings because as the rain starts to fall, the snow will absorb it and add a tremendous amount of weight. So we would encourage the community to do the same. That was what Amy was doing all day today. We have actual pictures of it. It's pretty amazing. You know, it's beautiful weather out there, but as that rain comes, it's going to be a concern. Also, your public works staff has been out trying to clear snow piles, and clearly we can't move all of the snow, but we've been moving it away from storm drains and grates and making sure that those are open and not full of sand or other things that were moved around with the snow. And in some cases, you'll see that we scraped and put some of that back up onto the sidewalk to basically create a berm so that water couldn't flow over it. The city, the county, and the state have all declared emergency for this area, among other counties. There's a lot of resources that will be coming. We'll be providing those on social media, but the county's OES site is really the most beneficial for us. The chamber and the city and the county have been working with our elected representatives, and the chamber is actually very successful with Senator Dolly in getting some traction on the ability for employees that lost work, either hours, days, or now maybe weeks, to be able to get limited term unemployment coverage for that. The EDD has not released that information yet, but the senator has made some accommodations on the website so that we can start reporting that need within the community, and we have for the businesses here in Nevada City, and we hope that that is coming soon. And not that that solves all of our problems, but for the hundreds of relatively low-paid, $17 an hour folks that work in the downtown, the Seven Hills, that provide for our community and tourism on a daily basis, that will be, I think, helpful. So that is all I have for you this evening, Madam Vice Mayor.
Thank you so much. Council members, who would like to report back?
I remember the storm Sean was talking about, and when you're a little kid, all that snow, that's the greatest thing that ever happened to you. And then I found out more recently that when you're an adult human being, it's the worst thing ever, and it makes your life a total nightmare. So congratulations to all the kids of the community, and condolences to the grown-ups. The Public Works Department, I mean, I feel like Lou mentioned it at some point, that they should be commended, and Shane should be carried through the streets in a good way, not dragged anywhere. I wonder about, with the coming rain, what sort of, how the wastewater treatment plant handles that much extra.
Yeah.
That place is fascinating. I just don't know. It's going to be a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I would be interested in just learning for myself, and maybe that would be of interest. Separate systems. I have Gary Peterson next to me, ladies and gentlemen. He knows things. That's what he does. All the snow kind of shifted a lot of the committee schedules. So I know that I've got a bunch of public meetings coming up. I couldn't tell you exactly when they are. I just know that there's many of them.
Business for you is the 29th, and Vibrancy is the 30th.
Mm-hmm.
That's just you, though.
I got the ERC tomorrow morning at 7:30. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, holy smokes. I hope everyone was listening to Sean Grayson when he was talking about what's going to happen when the rain hits the snow on your rooftops, everybody. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, Gary Peterson.
Is that all right, Mayor?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, please take over, Gary, please.
Try to stop him.
Quickly.
No, thank you.
Before he comes back.
Yeah, so my wife Christine has taken to calling this Snowvid because it never ends and everybody's stuck inside going crazy. So it's starting to, I went to Briar Patch last week and it was really clear that a lot of people had not been out of their houses for a while. But really, the entire city, the entire community has come together in really great ways, and that's what we do here. I had the really interesting opportunity to meet with Congressman Kevin Kiley last week at the Rood Center. The Grass Valley, the mayor of Grass Valley, contacted him. He came up. The county put together a meeting with elected officials, with the EEOC and CAL FIRE, where he learned a lot about who we are and what we're looking at. I think it's in a lot of conversation about PG&E. And I want to be real clear, and I'm absolutely satisfied with the quote that I made in the paper about PG&E and everything else I've ever said about PG&E. I stand behind that, but I also want to differentiate the difference between how PG&E is managed and allocates resources and the people in the field who are doing the work out there every day. I was looking at them today out there with their trucks, messing with electricity and the snow and trees, and there's not enough of them. At one point, I think it's changed, but 1/4 of the power outages in the state of California were located in Nevada County. And certainly the resources were not allocated that way. So there's a lot of conversation around that. So we left it with the congressman going to look for resources that he could send in our direction, and we'll see how that goes. I got home and my power came back on. So I think he, he took care of me, so I really appreciated that. But it was a great showing of the entire region and the county together and how well coordinated we are in the work that we're doing together. And I think primarily above all, the communication that's happening in our city along the way. So I'm looking forward to springtime. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Lou?
I have a sweet note and a sour note. The sweet note is that there's been a tremendous amount of flexibility shown. I know I had 11 of 15 committee meetings and volunteer organizations cancel. Everybody took it in stride, and they all said, let's just do it when it's more sensible to do it. And I've seen so many examples of neighbors helping neighbors, even without being asked. They show up with shovels. I saw today Richard Thomas, the husband of Teresa Thomas, out there shoveling up garbage that had spilled from a tipped over bin and putting it back in the bin, then putting the bin back in the place where the neighbor had left it because they were not in town. So they would not have known that had happened. That brings me to my sour point, which is waste management. I know it's not a city program. I know the county is more in charge of that contract. But my goodness, didn't they learn anything from last year about communicating accurately with its customers? I got 5 notifications of when my garbage and recycling would be picked up, and none of them were true. None of them happened. I spoke to a restaurant owner today who didn't have his recycling picked up because it wasn't, quote, on the street. If he had put it on the street, it would have been on a 3-foot snow berm and tossed off into the street and created litter. So I think still they have not learned that they need local context for the advice that they're giving us. And that's my sour note.
All right. Gary, did you want to add to that?
Well, I did. It's true. I was very confusing on my street, and they did, in fact, come and pick up trash, but I couldn't tell the difference between when they were picking up trash or when my neighbors were trying to protect their parking places. So trash cans were everywhere, but they did pick up. But it's true, and it was the same thing with PG&E. The confusing communications really don't benefit anyone. I mean, I received a communication that my power was turned on. My power would come back Tuesday after it had been on for 6 hours already, and, on and on. So, but that, you're right. Excellent point, Council.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I just want to echo some of that, not the sourness, but just commend the resiliency of residents and neighbors and business owners and downtown and Seven Hills staff and workers. You know, I walked into a few businesses this week and they're hustling. They're doing the best they can. You know, they're short-staffed. Some people can't get to work, and those people are really concerned. I'm pleased to hear about I'm grateful for Senator Dolly's efforts towards the unemployment. But yeah, you know, this community does really well in a crisis. We can really, really come together, despite what side of the aisle we were on any of the local measures most recently. So yeah, just commending people's resiliency and togetherness around that. And also just a note, more explicitly, the Vibrancy Committee meets Thursday, March 30th at 6 p.m. in this room. We will be looking at a draft public art ordinance. We're really, really excited to get feedback from local artists and community members, and we're using art very broadly. Included in that, the sort of typical art that we think of, you know, muralists, you know, painters and sculptors, but also food artists, people who do food, and just kind of looking at it broadly. Anybody who brings vibrancy into our community is welcome. Even if you don't bring vibrancy into our community, you're welcome. And that's all I have. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Great, all those in favor?
Aye.